Good evening. Just getting to a spot where I can get the sun out of my eyes. Hello to Kansas, Colorado. Maybe you recognize this particular building behind me. Apologize for a late supper with Sean tonight. Got tied up. Yeah, you know that hotel. I think we've both spent plenty of time at this hotel. But so got tied up tonight talking with an advertising agency that I worked with pretty closely from my days at Precision Planning. And you know, this business is all about relationships and networking and people and communicating. And so anyway, it was good to catch up with them tonight. Actually delivered a bit of a gag gift to one of them and had a little bit of a good time and enjoyed some pizza. But tonight I wanted to talk about communication, because we all feel like we're probably great communicators, and you might be good at sending emails or composing messages or feel like we're communicating our message correctly. And this applies whether we're in business, whether we're talking about our farm, whether we're talking about our consumers, whatever we're doing, our teams that we might manage. All of these things are applicable. And as we talk about communication, and you know, I'm sure if we've worked on the farm with our siblings or even our fathers or our uncles, we've experienced this. But communication is tough. While a lot of companies and people say that they are great at communication, communication is the #1 point of contention with most people. And I like to think I'm a great communicator. However, I also know that what I think in my mind and what I process is probably different than what somebody else would process it. So we have to make sure that as we're communicating with others, we put ourselves in their shoes, that they might not think the same way we do. They might not process that information the same way we do. So if we think that we're telling the whole story, chances are we're probably not, because we're leaving out some of those key details that might be important for them to get the message correctly. And one of these instances, you know, if you've ever dealt with an estate or a will, unless it's written out or communicated effectively in a will, it doesn't really matter. So it's important that you understand, not only in a legal document of a will, that unless it's stated explicitly of who's to get what and what will happen with X, Y, or Z asset, it didn't happen. And that's the same with communication. And I know with my father helping me on the farm, it gets really frustrating when I know what I want him to do, and we think probably more alike than we care to admit. But the reality of it is what I communicate to him or what he communicates to me is not quite what we both agree on. So as we think about our businesses, our employees, our counterparts, our friends, are we being explicit in communicating what we really intend? Or are we intending to communicate something that we know, but we're not doing a great job of communicating that to that other person? So, you know, it's easy for us to get short-sighted. It's easy for us to think that we're doing the right thing. It's easy for us to know what we're intending to communicate, and we feel like we're doing it effectively, but in reality, we're not. So it's important to take a step back, understand, who am I trying to communicate with? Who is my target audience? Maybe that's a consumer. Maybe that's a fellow business partner. Maybe that's a family member. And maybe that's just a coworker. But the reality of it is we all have brains wired. God blessed us with great brains, super awesome design that allows us to think differently, think clearly, maybe not so clear at other times, but we all process things just a bit different. And that's what makes each person great and unique. But we as leaders and managers and really farmers trying to communicate with consumers, it's important for us to realize that communication's tough. We need to understand how that other person has seen that situation. And you know, I hate to make this Periscope a book report, I've told you about Crazy Busy. I just finished another book called Extreme Ownership. And you know, that book was, I actually just finished listening to it. I did the audiobook version given my travel schedule lately. But, you know, they talk about communication on the battlefield. And Extreme Ownership is a book written by 2 Navy SEALs that talk about how communication and leadership, how Navy SEALs lead and win is the subtitle. But it's really about communicating in intense situations that are, in their situation, is a matter of life and death. And as we think about it from the farm or the business aspect, it may not be life or death, but we have to make sure that you're communicating the effective relative procedures or processes or important information at the time, and not necessarily what we think might need to be known that's really totally irrelevant. And you know, so I encourage you, as you think about how we communicate, that you put yourself in that other person's shoe, that they might not see what you see. They might not know what you know. They might not understand the situation because they haven't been involved in a meeting or a conversation that you were involved in. They don't know what's in our brain as we think about how we communicate with others. So try and empathize with them a little bit and understand how they are looking at that respective situation, because they're probably missing some pretty important aspects of a conversation. And if you go and communicate only snippets, then all of a sudden that lost in translation becomes real, even though you're speaking the same language. So, you know, something on my mind tonight, you know, it's just, we are all guilty of it. And I think as we use cell phones, you know, and tonight I spent 2 hours with this team, really just talking and answering questions and learning from them, understanding what are they doing now, how is their view of the industry changing, what am I doing today, what's each other's perspective of the business or the industry moving forward. And it's all about communication, and we don't do that enough because of these devices that we're all watching this from, or our cell phones, iPads, computers. But don't be afraid to communicate, and don't do it in shorthand. Do it in longhand. Do it in long form. Sit around a dinner table, grab a drink, grab a pizza, grab supper, or just grab coffee, and talk and communicate and understand how people view the situation that you might be in. And frankly, talking through situations can help you tremendously in identifying where those gaps are. And once you identify those gaps, gosh, it all becomes a lot clearer for you and the other person. You don't get as upset. Go to the Hill for dinner and beverages. That's a great way to do it too if you're in St. Louis. That's where I'm at tonight. So you'll notice probably a different background hotel in front of me here, but certainly go have a conversation, talk to people. Don't necessarily, I'll tell you what, social media is great to communicate and learn or meet other people, and it's interestingly enough, you can use social media to learn about people. That way when you do meet them face to face, it's like you've known them for years. But communicate outside of social media, outside of email, outside of text messages, outside of hearts, but I appreciate those. And just empathize with people, because they might not be wired quite like God wired our brains. That's what makes us all unique. And as I kind of kicked off, you know, communication is hard. No matter who you are or how great you think you might be at communication, it's something we all can work on, and we can all continue to learn and develop that skill. And so tonight, that's what we're talking about: communication, how you do it, how you try to become better and more effective at it. And apologize for the late supper with Sean, but that'll wrap up Supper with Sean. Hey, Burdett, good to see you. Late supper must have been good for Burdett. So, but good to have everybody on tonight, and we will be back hopefully tomorrow night down in St. Louis again. So no promises on the timeline, but certainly we'll probably talk about risk tomorrow night. Somebody had requested we talk about risk as a young farmer and rancher, so I think tomorrow night we'll talk about risk. and how to manage that, and how to communicate effectively around that risk. So everybody, thanks for joining Supper with Sean tonight. Have a great night. We'll see you tomorrow.